Well, I posted on Facebook that due to some confusions around here about scheduling, I'm going to wait to start First Corinthians at noon on Tuesday because I've got other things I got to be away on um, Monday, and so Tuesday will be the beginning of that. However, tonight I am going to have the 6 o'clock Bible Geek, never fear, and also on Monday we'll be doing that. And Gnostic Sabbath, as usual, will be on Saturday at 4 p.m. But I was able to post this too late for you to know not to show up today. And so since you kindly have, I thought I would do something else quick that might interest you, namely reading you a review of David Litwa's book, Simon of Samaria and the Simonians, Contours of an Early Christian Movement. I've reviewed some of his great books before, and this is a little unusual for my Litwa reviews. But anyway, here we go. And tell me what you think. Okay. What the hell? A whole monograph about Simon Magus, citing innumerable scholars' opinions and theories, but not a peep about F.C. Bauer? Not even to condemn him as a no-good Hegelian, as is customary these days? Not even a damn mention? I just don't get it. I'm convinced that Bauer solved the puzzle long ago. I'm equally persuaded by the work of Hermann Dettering and Robert Eisenman, who have furthered Bauer's theories. Bauer's student/colleague Gustav Volkmar first pointed out the link between Acts 8:4 through 24, Philip, Peter, Simon, Samaria, etc., and Galatians 2:1 through 10, both of which seem to be telling the same story, though from diametrically opposite standpoints. Paul recounts his visit to the Pillar Apostles, seeking their recognition for his law-free apostolic ministry among the Gentiles. They agree, but with one proviso: he must render tribute to the capital P poor saints of Jerusalem. They were called the poor. He agrees and begins collecting the funds from his various far-flung congregations. See 1 Corinthians 16:1 through 4, and 2 Corinthians chapters 8 and 9. But eventually he expresses doubt that the pillars will accept it. Romans 15:30 through 31. Something appears to have gone amiss, presumably the interference in his churches by, quote, the men from James, unquote, the circumcision party. He shows up in Jerusalem to bestow the collected funds on the mother church, but instead James the Just tells him to use the money to pay for Nazirite haircuts for some of the Torah-observant brethren in order to quiet the suspicions of the many Jewish Christian, quote, zealots for the law, unquote, Acts 21:20. The ploy does not work, but only provokes a riot. Acts 18 presents an invidious version portraying Simon Magus, that is Paul, seeking from Peter and John apostolic powers / inclusion in the apostolic ministry. In this version, he is rudely rebuffed right off the bat, his offer of money rejected. Luke splits Paul into a good, that is Torah-friendly, safely Catholicized Paul, and a bad old Gnostic Paul, Simon. Remember, he is throughout Acts trying to rehabilitate Paul as well as Peter in the eyes of each other's fans. Litwa writes off the Clementine homilies altogether as pure fiction, disdaining the views of earlier scholars that the 4th century Christian novel incorporates 2nd century materials. For instance, the exchange between Peter and Simon, in which Simon Magus both preaches the Pauline notion that the Torah was given by angels, not by God, Galatians 3:19 through 20, and echoes Paul's claim to have received his gospel from no man, but from a direct revelation from Christ, Galatians 1:11 through 12. To which Peter opposes the superiority of those who learned from Christ in person, Acts 1:21 through 22, Acts 2:32, 3:15, 4:20, 5:32, 10:39, 13:31. To me, this stuff fits more naturally in the 2nd century than the 4th. Similarly, Litwa is willing to accept much of what Irenaeus says of Simon, but ignores the Pauline implications of the Magus' preaching of salvation by grace alone. Detering modified the Tübingen hypothesis, suggesting that Simon was the real name of the character featured in both versions of the story, Paul being the literary alias. How interesting that Catholic apologists regarded Simon as the father of all the Gnostic heretics, while Gnostics all looked back to Paul. Perhaps both groups were correct because they were talking about the same man. Eisenman buttressed this case by bringing into it the story of Elymas the sorcerer in Acts 13. The story reads like a reshuffling of the elements of the Simon story in Acts 8 and that of Saul's conversion in the very next chapter. The character who converts is named Paulus, but the character who opposes the gospel and goes blind is Elymas, who is the twin actant of Simon Magus. Some manuscripts give his name as Etomas or Etoimas. As it happens, Josephus mentions a Rasputin-like magician called Simon belonging to the entourage of Felix, Festus, Agrippa, Bernice, and Drusilla, with whom, of course, Paul is likewise associated in Acts chapters 24 through 25. Some manuscripts of Josephus have the magician named Atomas. Thus, Simon is Atomas, is Etomas, is Etoimas, is Elymas, is Simon, is Paul. Acts's Elymas is also called Bar Jesus. Might this not refer to the Simonian belief recorded by Irenaeus that Simon Magus taught he had previously appeared in Judea as Jesus Christ, but was now active in Samaria as the avatar of the Father? Son here might denote successor. Speaking of this, Litwa perceptively describes Simonian belief as a form of modalism, the, quote, heretical, unquote, belief that Father, Son, and Spirit do not constitute a trinity, but rather denote successive modes of appearance/activity. Father in the Old Testament era, Son in the life of Jesus, and Spirit in the church age. Simon was then the God who thus revealed himself in three successive forms. But doesn't this clash with his contention that Simonians considered themselves to be Christians? Wouldn't they place all their chips on Simon with Jesus as his precursor, analogous to John the Baptist in Christian reckoning? Wouldn't it be like the Unification Church, for whom not Jesus, but Sun Myung Moon is the main attraction? This is not exactly an objection. I just don't get it. And did the Simonians view Simon as the second coming of Jesus? One final observation of a methodological nature. Litwa seems perhaps to be giving us a minimalistic account of Simon Magus, sort of an apophatic Simonology. He spends most of the book sifting through all the ancient treatments of Simon, discarding this, debunking that, discounting mischievous legend and polemical slander. The result is an irreducible core of what we can be reasonably confident in regarding an historical Simon. But I wonder if such a sketch should be accepted as an adequate picture of Simon of Gitta. Isn't it reductionist? We may have whittled down a giant to a midget. It is common to wonder if the, quote, historical Jesus, unquote, produced by historical criticism could really have been impressive enough to have given rise to Christianity. I wonder the same thing about Litwa's cut-rate Simon. Well, that's going to be in the Journal of Higher Criticism, so you've got an advanced peek here. But let's see, we got plenty of time, so let me come up with, let's see. Okay, how about another advanced look at something from the Journal of Higher Criticism? This is pretty short. It's called Chariots of Irony by me. The Deuteronomic history presents the reader with a puzzling conundrum of which little is made in the text, but which has nonetheless long troubled eagle-eyed students of Joshua and its sequel, Judges. Suddenly I'm beginning to think I did read this to you already. Let's forget that and take a look at another one. The old memory is beginning to fail me. Did I read The Adventure of the Ephesian Wild Man? I think maybe I did after all. Let me just keep looking here. We'll come up with some entertaining stuff here in a second that I'm pretty sure you haven't heard. Here's one you probably don't remember. And all right. This is called God Cop, Bad Cop. And I may have read this one also, but I think you'd get a kick out of it. Again, it's not that long. So there we go. God Cop, Bad Cop. The poor sweating bastard had no idea why he had been unceremoniously grabbed off the street. But why? What did I do? He'd yelled this repeatedly, but all the two cops would say is, "If you weren't an evildoer, we wouldn't be arresting you. Now come along quietly, buddy." Both men were businesslike, both bearded, which seemed a little strange for police officers. One was visibly older, with snow-white hair. His expression suggested a habit of fierceness. The younger man's brow betrayed a note of discomfort with what they were doing. Now the nondescript man, sitting alone at what must have been an interrogation table, unadorned except for a few nicks and coffee cup circles here and there, took stock of his Kafkaesque situation, wondering what might happen next. Wasn't he owed a lawyer? He didn't know any, and he suspected that any provided for him would really be on the side of the authorities, not him. But now the door swung open, and the two policemen walked in, sat down across from him. Both held coffee cups. Neither offered any to him. For a moment they stared at him in silence. Then the older man spoke. "You're some poor excuse for a good citizen, and you know how I know? It's your atheism. You don't make any secret of it, do you? And atheists have no moral code. They can't. You might do anything. You might have done anything already. Isn't that so?" Stunned, the man replied, "Look, it's true. I'm not religious, I'll admit, but I've never hurt anybody. I've never broken any law. What's more, I don't plan to. You can't arrest me for not believing in God." Smack! He recoiled from the blow, feeling the blood trickling from his mouth. "What the hell was that for? Look, I know my rights, and you—" Smack! Again. His nose was bleeding this time. "Yeah, smart guy? And who gave you those rights? You got no God, you got no rights." Blinking the pain away, the prisoner began calculating his chances if he tried to defend himself. As if they'd read his mind, the older cop nodded to his younger partner, who stood up, produced a pair of cuffs, and bound his captive's wrists. Sitting back down, he leaned over and addressed the other. "Sarge, are you sure this is necessary? Look at the poor sad sack. He doesn't even understand what he's doing here." The senior officer sat back and gave the younger man a look that was hard to interpret. Was he annoyed? Impatient? Was there even a note of contempt? "Okay, sonny boy, you take a crack at him. I'll give you some room and go for a smoke break." Both the prisoner and his remaining interrogator watched the big man leave. Then they turned to look one another in the face. "I'm sorry about that. I really am. And I'm going to be even sorrier for what he's probably going to do when he comes back if I can't get anywhere with you." What do you mean?" The policeman rubbed his brow with eyes momentarily closed. He's liable to get pretty rough, and I mean rough, as in you ain't seen nothing yet." "But how does he get away with this crap? You guys haven't even read me my rights." "There you go, talking about rights again. You know, he's got a point. Without a theistic frame of reference, you don't even have any rights. Nobody does. Why don't you reconsider your position, my friend? It would go a lot easier for you if you did. And I'm not just talking about avoiding some missing teeth and broken bones here today. Think of the ways your life could improve if you became a believer. You'd have a spring in your step every day, knowing you're doing God's work, obeying His will. And you'd have a whole new family of fellow Christians to love and support you. It's great, really. That's the way you should look at it. The benefits are great, and he, thumbing in the direction of the door, wouldn't have to spill any more of your blood. Won't you think about it, my friend? The man handcuffed to the metal chair lowered his head to his chest to think. That's it, pray. Pray, and God will hear. But the head came back up to eye level, and the prisoner spoke unwaveringly. I'm sorry, officer, but it just doesn't work like that. Any decision I made would be phony, don't you see? It's not like buying a new car. I can't suddenly start believing things because I'd probably feel better if I did. And if I tried to believe just to save my skin, well, I'd know I was kidding myself, and so would you. Don't you see that? You seem like an intelligent guy. The policeman slowly shook his head. I'm so sorry to hear you say that, my friend. So sorry, because now I'm going to have to do this. The blow connected with blinding force, all the more shocking because it came as a total surprise. When the prisoner's sight cleared, he could see the other cop, the white-bearded one, coming back into the interrogation room, rolling up his sleeves. The younger one was fitting a pair of brass knuckles onto his hand. Worse yet, a third cop was wheeling in a metal cart on which the captive thought he could see a collection of scalpels, pliers, hammers, and bone saws. Just before he fainted, he heard one of the cops say with a harsh chuckle, "Just remember, buddy boy, God loves you, and this is going to hurt him more than it does you." Oh, dear reader, did I forget to tell you the characters' names? The older policeman was Sergeant Jehovah. His younger partner was Officer Jesus. And the prisoner, well, what's your name? So, boy, I'm telling you, that didn't take very long at all. Let's see if in this hour we can have even more fun with. Ooh. Yeah, here's something I wrote recently. Yeah, this is called Kryptonite Vaccine. No, this will not be an attack on the COVID vaccine. It will instead treat the subject of worry as a futile attempt to acclimate ourselves to the prospect of death. We live amid a barrage of bad news and worse prospects. What if the invading hordes of illegal migrants, mostly single males of military age, arm themselves against the rest of us and attempt to overthrow the government? What if our government reveals itself as a fascistic surveillance state? What if the Russians lost? What if the Russians launch an electromagnetic pulse to devastate our power grid, effectively destroying our civilization, initiating a desperate war of all against all? None of these things is really implausible. All portend a ruinous future for America and mankind. There's plenty to dread at this particular historical junction. That is, if you're into dreading. Personally, I am not. I find myself somehow incapable of worrying about possible disastrous futures, whether for myself as an individual or for the world. It may be a positive neurosis and a dangerous delusion, but there is a certain logic to it. And the lesson I want to teach is one I learned from an old issue of Superman comics. The Man of Steel tried an experiment in which he retreated to an isolated spot and placed a kryptonite collar around his own neck, hoping he might learn to develop a tolerance to the stuff. It was painful, enervating, but so far, so far, no good. And wouldn't you just know it? Some evil alien chose that moment to attack the weakened Superman, easily defeating him temporarily. This story stuck with me for the rest of my life until one day it occurred to me that it was a parable about death and the fear of death. When we contemplate our inevitable passing, wait a second. When we contemplate our inevitable passing, it is merely morbid. We imagine that by dwelling on death, we can desensitize ourselves to it, get used to the idea. It will become more familiar to us, and we will not fear it as we do. But alas, it won't work. Worse still, it will backfire. You will not acclimate yourself to death. Instead, you will only be inoculating yourself with a deadly dose of the poison you are hoping to vaccinate yourself against. Your morbid contemplation of death will only poison you slowly. You are taking doses of death into yourself, hoping that in this way you will eventually become immune to it, but you won't. You can't. Instead, you must learn from Epicurus, whose many followers hailed him as a god for freeing them altogether from the fear of death through one simple insight. Quote, when death comes, we are not, end quote. Dying may admittedly be painful, but being dead is not, for it is nothing. You won't be hanging around like Casper the Friendly Ghost, cursing the fact that you are dead, deprived of familiar pleasures and friendships. No, you'll just be dead, you fool. Otherwise, you seem to assume the mirror opposite of what you're doing. You implicitly imagine that when dead, you will bemoan the fact that you are henceforth shut out of life, envying those who are still alive. You're picturing yourself as dead, but with a morbid aftertaste of being alive. Just as, when alive, you morbidly sought to swallow a vaccinating dose of death. Forget it. You're either dead or alive. And while you are alive, death is simply none of your damn business. Get on with life. Rejoice in it while you have it. And don't worry, when you're dead, there will be no regretting the loss of your life, because you won't be there to regret it, okay? In short, why not let the dead bury their dead? Okay, that is making us finish a little earlier than we ordinarily would, but think of it as a chance to have a slightly longer lunch, maybe. Okay, so again, I will be doing the Bible Geek tonight, and then again Friday night, but nothing at noon tomorrow. And I will be doing Gnostic Sabbath on Saturday, and on Monday nothing at noon but Bible Geek at 6, and on Tuesday 1 Corinthians at noon and Bible Geek at 6. I hope that's fairly clear. Of course, I am uniquely able to confuse anything and to be confused by anything, but I hope this will be clear. So I'll be seeing you Yeah, tonight.